Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat. Spirited conversations with interesting people. There we go. My name is Chris. I'm your host, and this is AJ Hoffman, the AJ Hoffman. He's not in this episode. I just saw him outside. We're a few drinks in, so we figured we'd sit down with this introduction, and he's about to have Sugar Ray Leonard in here.
Yeah, hard times. I had Oscar De La Hoya a week or two ago, and Sugar Ray Leonard today. My job's very tough.
You've had the week of a lifetime. I mean, Jesus Christ, Sugar Ray Leonard, Oscar De La Hoya.
I've met De La Hoya.
This chair? What's the figuration?
Yeah, so when we do it, the table turns. So we've and he'll probably be in your chair. So you'll have the same chair as Sugar Ray Leonard.
I figured we could give you a plug here since we're having a drink together. The name of your show, when's it on? When can people watch you interview Sugar Ray Leonard?
Well, you can watch it on SportsMap. I'm not sure, sportsmap.com. I'm not sure how they'll cut it up. That's not my department.
Do they put it in the podcast arena?
It'll definitely be
on
there.
Podcast Arena.
My show's on from 4 to 7 though. We'll play that interview today on my show. And yeah, it's the Blitz on ESPN 97.5. So
I wasn't sure it was going to be on the Blitz.
It will be. We'll play it on the Blitz today.
I've got a listener that listens to every episode, Nicholas Talamantes with Four Roses Bourbon, who is such a fan of you.
Awesome.
And he is dying to sit down with you guys. So if you are a Four Roses Bourbon fan, you definitely have an easy win there. So
okay,
we'll have to get him in here. Yeah, so this week's episode, we kind of sat down with two longtime local guys, Travis Whitmeyer of Whitmeyer Distilling, longtime supporters of you guys.
Yes, both of those guys are long-term supporters of me. So yeah, I was the door opens and it's people I knew came out. It was very fun,
and it was hugs instantly.
Yeah. Rassul and I go way back as well.
So. Rassul and Travis are great guys, and this episode features. So Rassul's with Buffalo Bayou Brewing Company. Travis and Rassul did something that I don't think has been done yet, and a brewery and a distillery partnered up and made an American single malt together. Now, you've got great brands like Ranger Creek out of San Antonio who makes both Ranger Creek Brewing and Ranger Creek Distilling, but that's all in-house. This is the first time that these guys did it just for shits and giggles. And well, I'll say it anyways. So these guys got together, made an American single malt. We featured on this episode. We kind of walk through the whole thing. And then we talk about pretty much every aspect of all three tiers of the system. There's this big battle going on right now with beer and the distributing tier and being able to take stuff home from the brewery. And basically, we did what my favorite thing is to do is where I kind of shut up and the guest Rassul he just talked for an hour and 15 minutes. It was beautiful. I loved every second of it. So we've got the Whiskey Social's in full swing. I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but we just released a tasting of 4 different 40-year-old single malts at the event at no extra cost. No extra cost, all included. You can taste through $15,000 of single malt whiskey for the price of admission. We're pretty excited about it. So check out the details of that at HoustonWhiskeySocial.com or Eventbrite. Get your tickets as soon as possible. We are 80% sold, something like that. We definitely are. I think I'm hoping we kind of sell out before rodeo, but I doubt it because this is the largest rodeo in the U.S. Other than that, I think that pretty much covers everything. iTunes, Google Play, and without further ado, Travis Whitmeyer of Whitmeyer's Distilling and Rassul with Buffalo Bayou Brewing. Cheers. Thanks so much for being on.
Oh, of course, brother.
Yeah,
of course.
Rassul.
Always good to see
Travis.
you. Travis.
We do have quite a few listeners out of state who may not know anything about you too. So I will, like we said, I will do the interview, and then at the beginning I'll do the introduction about who you guys are. But you guys have been early in on the craft beer movement here in Houston. You guys have been killing it for a while. And really early on the distilling movement here in Houston. You were the first in the Houston area. Now,
County, yeah.
Houston area. I think it's, if the Houston Bourbon Society can allow people who are Houston adjacent and spring counts, then you being unincorporated Houston counts as Houston. I think it's literally. I'm not going to say the word I want to say. I think it's dumb that anyone would argue just because it's an unincorporated Houston when it's literally. If you were to move the arm of a clock from 10 p.m. over to 2 p.m. Well, 2 p.m. is still Houston. That, for some reason, the boundaries and, on that side of Houston is still Houston, but the boundaries on this side of Houston's not. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So first in the Houston area is what I like to say. Houston unincorporated area. But Yellow Rose, I'm dying to get Houston Ferris in. He's been a long time listener to the show. I've always kind of had an appreciation for his just everything about him. Just seems like a really great guy.
Yeah.
And having, of course, you two on. You guys were all early on. So, I mean, Buffalo Bayou started in...
Yeah, 2012 we sold our first keg, January 27th, 2012.
And you guys were 2012 too, right?
We're right at the same age.
Literally.
They've got a birthday this weekend.
7 years ago on Sunday.
Wow. Yeah,
7 years in April.
Yeah, I knew it was April 2012. And then I think Yellow Rose opened later that year. Was it July? Or was it a year later?
So, no, they beat us by a few months in being permitted.
Sure. There's lots of people with permits that
they moved into the city, and that happened, I don't know, 3-4 years ago?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, it's I didn't realize that wasn't their original location.
No, they started up in Pinehurst. Kind of.
I'm not even sure where Pinehurst is.
North of Tomball.
Okay, I know where Tomball is.
Oh, wow.
That's part crazy. Of the show is definitely drinking, so let's get started.
Yeah.
This is the first single barrel, the blue label. That's the first single barrel that they did outside the distillery. As you see there, it's got all the proper required information filled out.
Of course.
Nice job on the label, Chris.
Let's see how it's faced away from the camera. That was the HBS's for single barrel. I actually designed that label. We submitted it.
Okay, so let's just talk about what the word design means, because I don't have a dictionary in front of me. But I have a plain white label.
Yeah.
And this is a blue and gold label. So would you say that you chose
the color
blue,
scheme, the wording,
gold, or both?
and give me.
Wow!
First of all,
Chris,
man,
you know what? This is amazing.
I'm gonna have Spindle Tap on next time.
Oh man!
It
only took 4 minutes. We got a timer.
I've always loved Travis's white label design. So
Microsoft Word.
So what we did?
Have you seen our OG labels? I designed them in PowerPoint, dude. It's ridiculously stupid.
Microsoft Art, Paint. I took his label and I wanted the colors reversed. The logos obviously much bigger. Basically, I took his label that he did in Microsoft Word and I wanted it to be a little bit more bold and popping. And then of course I think it was yours or Chris's idea for the wax you're like, we can do any wax you want. Like, yeah. So I mean, it bore this beautiful beast, and then all of a sudden it kind of opened the door for single barrel. I begged him for barrels for years, and he was like, I can. And then we wanted to make sure there's, when you're dealing with who your number one clients are, you got to give them first priority and stuff. And we killed two birds with one stone, and we offered it to Specs, and that opened the door for my relationships with Specs. We sold to that barrel in 47 minutes.
Oh, I know.
And it would have been 100% would have been 15 minutes or less.
I was watching
if you
on
didn't
Facebook.
Sign each bottle.
Yeah. I was watching on Facebook and missed it and was livid. I was so pissed.
If you had made a call, I'm sure Travis would have kept the bottle.
Well, no, I don't think that's accurate because I wouldn't make that call. As one entrepreneur to the next, I'd be like, no, go make that money, man. Because every 2 weeks you got to make payroll, and then 2 weeks from now you got to make payroll again. So I wouldn't ask for a free bottle. I would have gotten in line. I just had other things to do. I was just like, oh man, I can't believe I missed it. And now that I'm drinking it, I'm even.
It's a chocolate bomb.
Have you not had it before?
I'm even more. No.
You've definitely had my bourbon before.
Yeah, well, I've had all your stuff, but I haven't had this bottle. This is unbelievable.
It's a chocolate bomb. It's always this. I've always said I think that in terms of any kind of trope about Texas whiskey, Whitmeyer's bucks that trend, and you were the first. Not the only one anymore. I mean, have you tried Lone Elm?
No, I just saw that post the other day. I was like, okay, now that's something I got to try.
I've been obsessing about their wheat whiskey. Now, it's a wheat whiskey, so I don't know what the mash bill is, but they have a cast strength single barrel they offer for like $45 or $40 or something. And it was so surprisingly phenomenal. Texas has like I said, this stereotype with the way kind of like a young corn oil, heavily, small barrel influenced. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but as years have gone on, more and more distilleries have kind of figured it out. Barrel strength, Ranger Creek is phenomenal. Iron Root, they're killing it. You're killing it. Just all these places Balcones, yeah. I got this bottle. I haven't tried it yet. I've been dying to try it. So it's the new Froke, which is I believe it's French for frog's ass, and no, it's French oak. But they did this famous release a few years back that everybody was so proud of. And it goes for like crazy money on secondary right now. So they did another French oak release of their single malt, and I finally got my hands on it. I'm excited to drink it. So yeah, just everyone's killing it right now. And of course, the beer scene here, it's absurd, the beer scene right now. So
yeah, it's really lifting up. It's nice too. What's awesome is so we're opening the new facility, and that's got 100% of our focus. So Alex Stout and I, two of my partners, the three of us went up to Portland and Seattle to just get some recon going.
Sure.
We hit, I think, 34 breweries in 2 days. Like, that's not even an exaggeration. We were spending
carbs.
Yeah, we went with a list. We were on. It was work, as ridiculous as that sounds, but it was work. And I was so disappointed and underwhelmed by the liquid in Portland and Seattle that I came back with the bigger ego than I had even before going there.
Sure. You said 34 in 2 days?
Yeah.
That's absurd. We did 5 distilleries in 3 days, and I was exhausted. When you say it's work, it really is.
I did not finish a beer. I didn't finish a 5-ounce sample until about 7 o'clock on the first day, because most of the beer I was drinking was undrinkable. It was not up to our quality standards. And I was just like, the entire time, I was just like, man, every day I don't tell Ryan how amazing his liquid is, I'm taking him for granted. I need to it's like
you start texting him "I love you" messages while you're in Portland.
It's like these are those moments when you realize that you've got a hot wife who's awesome, and you went to a trashy strip club, and you're like, man, that was not worth $20. That wasn't worth $20. That wasn't worth $20. I'm gonna nail Mother's Day this year. That's a plan. That's how I felt coming back from Seattle, drinking other people's liquid.
That is such.
Ryan is just killing it. He's just the next freaking level right now.
That is such an appropriate
and deeply offensive.
No, not offensive. Like, because
oops, we're editing that part out.
We haven't talked about this. I haven't talked about it publicly. I don't know if I should, but I'm gonna say it anyways. But I've always been so anti strip club for the simple fact that it makes me sad every time. I always
walk out feeling worse than I walked in.
Yeah, that's depressing.
I don't. I haven't been in years, but when I was
been in forever, and hopefully not again.
They were
soon,
bachelor parties. I went for bachelor parties, and I never enjoyed them. And one time, the best experience I had is they had a pool table in the back, and me and this other guy who also didn't enjoy strip clubs, we played pool the whole night, and it's this sad, pitiful pit. Now, if you go do it, that's fine. Like I don't judge people who go. That's your business, but you're absolutely right. Where you feel like you start glad I'm married to this beautiful woman who's way out of my league, and you miss your kids. Like it's this horrible sad.
If you feel like strip clubs are depressing, go to 10 Barrel in Portland, Oregon, because I was looking forward to it.
Oh crap! You mentioned the name of the brand.
You're like, oh man, I'm excited about this and this and this. They got the GABF medal and everything. I got up there, and it was the biggest letdown of my life. It was like probably the way a woman feels like when I first dropped trout first time with her.
And there we go.
Like, oh wow!
I guess this is the Fred and AJ episode.
Was that? Anyways, it's just a disappointment. You get there, you're like, this? I trimmed my beard this morning. Like, I was expecting this to be awesome.
Yeah, it's this. I feel the opposite with Texas Spirits. We're still on such an infant stage compared to beer. I always speak of how proud I am of HBS being 5,000 members. Not because
that's crazy.
Well, not because we need the numbers, or not because numbers are important, but just it's remarkable. It's worth noting. Like, oh my God, this group is a beast. And I remember when I first did the first whiskey social, we capped it at just under 300 people.
Yeah.
And when I was telling people we're going to double in size for year 2, the year that you guys came and we had this amazing time, maybe a little too much of an amazing time for some of us. And I got a lot of remarks before the event that, oh, why would you want to double in size? The event's going to go to crap, whatever. I'm like, it's still only like 700 people. Like, it's not even that much. And Gene Beck was one of them. Gene was like, don't do it, man. Don't go back. And now the group's 5,000, and it's like every few months we hear some like it's too big. Okay, but it's this. You were saying that when we were 1,000.
Yeah.
Like but my whole point of all this is that even though we are the largest single market group in the nation, we're nothing compared to the beer scene. I mean, where you see 7,000, 10,000 members. And it's not just one group; it's a bunch of groups. And
but
the beer scene's absurdly.
I would say, and what I have so much respect for what you've built and the scene that you're and the community that you're cultivating.
I mean, Travis is a big part of it.
Yes,
I mean, everyone.
Yes. And I love how magnanimous and humble you are. That's wonderful. That's great.
I'm more humble than anybody you've ever met.
Well played. But the character of the conversation on the Facebook group and every conversation I have at all your events are always amazing. And so it's positive. It's real connoisseurs. It's people having really interesting conversations. On the beer side of the equation, we see a lot of this kind of like negativity, and
we see a lot of that too. It's something you fight, and it's something that I realized not to freak out about. I've said this before on the show that. A lot of people who are in the industry aren't used to these group ideas. Most of these groups have, for a long time, been, at least in this market, have been just consumers.
Yeah. And
this is the first time you're seeing all levels of the industry, everything is all together in one place. And it's very uncomfortable for some brands. They're not used to the transparency, the honesty, the snobbiness, the jerks.
Let's call the spade a spade, though, because in the beer industry, I see a lot of my compatriots and founding brewers just saying really negative things about the customer in a response. And I'm like, I had a Beer Advocate account like 18 years ago before it was legal for me to drink. Like, I was the keyboard ninja, like, wannabe connoisseur before opening the brewery. I spent all this time on bar stools.
Sure.
I was,
a lot of them start that way.
I am
right?
still a beer nerd. No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think a lot.
You don't think a lot of current craft beer, like Ingenious, they all started as nerds?
We're seeing a wave now of hobbyists who are going into the craft a little bit more. Maybe they're hobbyist plus,
sure,
if you will. But in terms of like mid-major brands and the ones that have the funding to really scale, we're seeing dumb capital chasing PowerPoint slides and don't necessarily have that heart. That's why I felt like on that trip
you were so disappointed.
Yeah, like 10 Barrel didn't have heart. You could tell it wasn't brewed with passion and love. And it's so kitschy and unicorn chasing for me to say that.
Sure.
But it shows. It plays out in the liquid.
I'll tell you this, and I hope he's not listening because I don't mean any offense to him. But I had a meeting yesterday with a brand, a distillery. And he simply asked me, he said, do you think it means less to people? There's two reasons to get into the industry, right? If you want to start a brand, whether it's whiskey or beer, start it for money or for passion. And I said, first of all, I don't think the two are necessarily mutually exclusive. I think you can do both.
Yeah.
But I think that I don't think there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with wanting to start just because you see money there, as long as you put the effort into the product. If your focus is money, but you're still producing a great product, then you've no problem, no harm, no foul. But if your focus is money and you're just putting out garbage, then you're a problem.
Yeah, I think there is still harm foul if you're leading with a profit motive before the product motive, and that's coming from someone who has a lot of other. I mean, there are a lot of different things that all of us could be doing if we wanted to solely make money.
So what's the harm?
What's
the harm?
The harm is that every single time, it will always come down to a coin flip where you have to follow one value or the other.
That's what you're saying, and you feel like it's gonna win.
It will always happen. It will always come down to a moment where your values will be tested, and you will come up with your true colors. And if your initial thought was always
financial bottom line.
Like, I mean, let's not mince words. I mean, at the end of the day, like, what are we looking for in terms of money as founders, right? I want to put, I don't have kids or, girlfriend really.
It's a few strip clubs.
Well, none that are legally recognized in the 48 contiguous states. Alaska was a really weird.
It was a real weird weekend.
There's no proof,
and thereres like 2 good breweries up there.
That DNA test was not fully sanctioned by. Anyways, but the greater point is, yes, I want to put my kids through college. Want to not have to worry about the things that my mom worried about, being a single mother on welfare, growing up and raising 2 kids.
Sure.
Like, so you want financial stability,
sure,
and that is totally fine. Right? That is not a bad thing. That's what all of us want, right? And so we all have to do jobs. We just happen to choose this, right?
Sure.
But if your passion is a liquid and you do it well, the money will follow. It's not really that hard it's not a hard equation.
Sure.
But every single individual that I've seen, and I'm not going to call anyone out by name.
So you have so far. Keep going. I'm enjoying it.
No, every individual that I've seen that you can tell is profit seeking before beer seeking. Like I had an individual who founded a brewery, and he had told me, he drinks Coors Light at home. Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, I get shit faced and eat Taco Bell. Like, I'm not above any sort of trashy sort of things going in my mouth. We all know.
I watch Roseanne. I get it.
Right? So, but this individual, so he read an article that craft beer is hot, and that's why he and his family decided to put the money in. Well, they're not in business anymore, and I'm not trying to say negative things about him.
You're just saying you can see why.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I wake up and solely motivated to do this, and 7 years in, we're both working 80-hour weeks.
I backed off a little bit now that I have the kids.
Yeah, I'm down to 70 hours a week.
I've told people before, the first 2 years of a newborn child, which is totally off subject, I'm just going to interject this real quick. The first 2 years, or the first year of a newborn, is the closest you'll ever come to divorce, besides getting divorced.
Wow!
So it's such a hard year on a marriage that I don't think enough people realize that, and no one tells you about it. And I mean, me and my wife are super happily married. We're totally fine. But it is this remarkable thing that happens with newborns. I have no idea about what's going on in your marriage, but in my mind, so far, everyone that I've ever known to have a kid, I always ask them at the end of that year, hey, how was last year? It's and you've got to cut back on the hours, man. I mean, if you want to, If you don't have a marriage or any of these obligations, do the 100-hour weeks. But I did it for years, and I've had to cut back just because.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing how fast time flies. I mean, our kids are already. Sometimes you look at your 3-year-old and you're like, Jesus, you're going to be in school in no time.
Man. I thought we were going to drink whiskey, but now I've got a life
Now we're getting sad. But grab some Frog.
Back to strip clubs.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. And it's not 70 hours every week.
Fantastic.
But the greater point that I was making is
that I totally took off the rails.
When you've stacked up 50, 60-hour weeks, 10, 13, 20 weeks in a row, and you're hour 14 into a 16-hour day, and you're faced with a decision, and it is a fundamental decision. If you're motivated by the product, you will break in this direction. If you're motivated by money, you will break in a different direction. It is fundamentally true. And I don't share the values of the people who break in the wrong direction.
Sure.
So
how very matter of factly you presented that. It's not so. It seems very clear, because when I was asked the question, I thought, no, I mean, I get it, but I know in this particular case, the guy that had the financial backing partnered with his brother who had the passion.
Yeah,
and now now that you say that, if it does come down, I can see those brothers fighting a lot,
Now, I have,
not that they have.
I have investors, many of them, who are purely profit motivated. That is a wonderful thing for an investor to be. That's what investors are supposed to be. This is capitalism. We're not in France. It's awesome. We believe in these things, right? Sure. But I have creative control 100%, and I also have that long game, and I also have Ryan, that he has to look me in the eye and respect my decisions every day, and we have to make these decisions together.
Sure.
So, he is 100% motivated on product, no questions asked on that. And then I'm in the middle. Every time he has a question, I'm like, it's imperative that I don't run the numbers on the decision, but rather run that long-term strategy sort of thought.
Sure.
Where it's like, our brand's worth more than 10,000. Dump the fucking fermenter and let's move on. I don't care. Sorry. Mark that. Mark it foul.
Well, I was
over the line, Donnie.
I was checking to see if he wrote it down. He wasn't writing it down. I was like, oh, write it down.
It's so fluid. I can't help it. I'm
it's fine.
So sorry.
That's one thing I love about these shows is we get to have an honest conversation. And you mentioned Ryan actually watches, so shout out to Ryan. Hey, buddy. Yeah. I think that it's imperative of people just getting together and just having these, sometimes when you get online, intentions listen, I consider myself a pretty eloquent speaking person. My diction is pretty clear, but when I get online, I can't tell you how many times people misinterpret my perspective through text. And my day job kind of trains you on how to be, because they tell you, when you write an email to somebody, they're going to read it. And especially if it's something negative or criticizing, they're going to read it in the worst possible tone of voice in their head. So you have to be mindful of that. And I still, even to this day, have had people and friends that misinterpret my intentions or my perspective, especially if I'm playing devil's advocate on something. Like if you're trying to, I don't even know how we got in this perspective. Why did I bring this up?
Because I dropped an F-bomb fluidly, and we're talking about how awesome fluid conversation is.
Listen, man. Listen, I'm a horrible interviewer. My point is simply that these conversations come across 100% how they're intended.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to have the show, is that we can have these discussions and it just be...
That's the problem with the character of the conversation just globally in our world right now, right? Like, if you can sum it up in 150 characters, then it's not worth talking, right? Like, you can't sum up these things in a tweet. It's just that simple. Like, and then all the politics that are happening on Facebook and the conversations in these groups, it's like, well, I can't answer that with just one sentence.
Sure.
Like,
and then you've got to go back and forth for an hour. Yeah. And in the meantime, you're misinterpreting that 150 characters each time.
And you're getting fired up and distracted. And then you're like, wait a second.
And you call someone a Nazi.
I actually love this person. Like, it's ridiculous. Every time I talk, any of this sort of stuff, direct face-to-face with people, you're like...
It always goes right.
The politics seems to be...
Almost
excluded. Like
almost
it's non-existent.
Completely.
It's not.
I guess
everybody kind of feels the same way. Sick of it.
No, not at all. Right now, the Brewers Guild is in this bitter fight against the distributors over beer to go, and
which is where I'm going to slight the distributing tier. I mean, they sometimes you forget your purpose.
Well, but before we. Let's unpack distributing tier, though. Are you saying that every single individual is just painted with the same swath of color? Because that's the problem with the way the Brewers Guild is approaching it. They're playing tic-tac-toe.
The entire idea of a distributing tier,
What's that?
The entire idea of the distributing tier is a bit ridiculous. It's only because it's forced upon you.
Oh man, we could spend 2 hours getting really drunk, and I advocate the 3-tier system vehemently. The 3-tier system is the only reason we exist. If Anheuser-Busch could own all the way through the supply
lots of
chain,
countries do it without.
What's that?
Lots of countries do it without.
Try and buy craft beer in London. No,
don't get me wrong. The idea, my simple complaint is that you're forced to. That you have to. If you want to, I know that like in beer you can self-distribute or you can use a distributor. With spirits you don't have that option.
No,
and a lot of and honestly, without the 3-tier system, a lot of startups probably wouldn't happen because they don't have a way to get their stuff out there unless they're loading it up on their truck and taking it to a store. Each store, all of
the self-distribution carve out of the 3-tier system here in Texas is the reason that we exist and the reason we got momentum, and we did it perfectly. We distributed 50,000 cases in the greater Houston area ourselves, self-distributed. That's huge. It's ridiculous. It's bigger than like solely owned distributors that have multiple SKUs. We did that with one brewery. We did that for me out of my pickup truck. So the carve-outs that exist in the industry are great already.
That's a massive luxury that we don't have.
I know. And that's something that we need to talk about.
So the 3-tier system helps you in that way because they take that burden off even though you're being forced to take that burden off you.
It can, but I think it was the Mike Cameron interview where he mentioned, the number of brands in Texas. And it's been a couple of years. I just turned it off. It's not something that I really watch or pay attention to.
Sure.
But, the number of distributors hasn't increased. The amount of shelf space hasn't increased. So if you're forced to go through a distributor and you can't, if you're starting up and you're a small business and you can't load up your truck and go sell to a liquor store, so it can hurt you too.
Sure.
Yeah. And I agree. Look, there are all kinds of issues with the 3-tier system. The thing that I really want to dial in on with the whole conversation though is really the rhetoric and the idea of painting everyone in a simple swath, Yeah,
but because in this specific case, you're talking about the beer to go thing, right?
Well,
or even bottles to go. The fact that I can only get 2 from his distillery.
Yeah. That's crazy. And we're already capped. So we've got a cap that exists.
And then there's this other thing, and then there's this other thing, and the big breakthrough for us, when we're able to sell on our own premises. These are big breakthroughs, I'm talking about everything in concert. The negotiations in Austin are broken down and they've been busted because we create this brinksmanship and we create this us versus them mentality, painting people with negative rhetoric instead of bridge building. And there's so much bridge building to be done. I know that my 2 distributors here in Houston Distributing Company and Faust Distributing, the two owners of those 2 companies, Bo and Don, are 2 of my most incredible supporters. They're phenomenal personal supporters too. When when I'm having trouble just as a young founder getting his head right around an organization that's bigger than I can control, they're there as steady hands, having run companies, giving me deeply personal advice, and it's amazing. And it's almost having a board member that's also your customer.
Sure.
So if you can see individuals as human beings and treat them well and talk to them as if they're human beings, then wonderful things happen.
Right.
It's a little kumbaya of me to say it like that. But what's happening right now is then we're like, distributors are the problem. They're not the problem. Distributors, the thing that the distributors are nervous about are the same thing that we're nervous about. I don't mean to put words in their mouth, but imagine a situation where you own a company where 90% of your revenues are coming from a single supplier, and that supplier can fuck you over, can mess you up anytime they choose to.
One per segment.
Right? Anytime they choose to. Or in the wine and spirits world where there are no franchise laws. Yes, please. There are no franchise laws. So you can just pull your rights and switch horses after they've invested all these years, right? So why would they keep investing? If you start really digging into that tier and understanding the reasons why that they're making decisions in this way, then you're like, okay, so your major issue is a monopoly, right? Think about this. Anheuser-Busch, the largest brewery on the freaking planet, bought out SAB Miller, right? South African Brewers Miller, the second largest brewer on the planet. And where was the DOJ during that conversation? Where was the government talking about antitrust laws? A single entity can now control 80% of volume in the U.S. Come on, man. That's anti-competitive.
So hold on. We've got to take a quick break, but I do want to summarize what you're saying essentially, and that is that distributing tier is so necessary, and the good outweighs the bad. is essentially what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now,
is this where we wanted to go with the conversation?
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
This is.
I don't think there's any goal.
No, I've been having.
I don't really have a goal in life, so that kind of works.
The whole idea of this, the whole idea of the show is what happens when we get together, anyways.
Yeah.
So these conversations happen. They're incredibly in depth, and they're a bit pulling the curtain back for a lot of consumers who don't know. So yes, this is exactly what I'd hoped, is to get two guys together that are willing to talk. But as far as this goes, I'm with you 100%. But would you not need to differentiate the? So, listen, coming from someone who misspoke or misspeaks quite a bit.
I don't know about misspeaking,
but if saying one thing but meaning another, right? Yeah. So when someone's talking about how the distributors are the problem, should you not differentiate their intentions, their real meaning, and separate the consumer who says that phrase and means specifically the issues that are the problem versus the consumer who's ignorant, meaning they simply don't know any better and are trying to get rid of that tier altogether completely? Well, meaning that good people can do bad things, or that
I would say this. When you're talking about the consumers, I'm not faulting a consumer for their speech. They can say whatever they want. At the end of the day, a consumer who is a big fan of what we do is maybe not necessarily as informed of how the sausage is made. And so, I don't really begrudge the fact that someone who's isn't necessarily 100%. You shouldn't read a novel or a reference document to understand it, right? But I'm talking really about the suppliers, and I'm talking about people in my tier. I'm talking about brewery owners.
The first tier, yeah.
I'm talking about brewery owners who stand side by side with me and have the same level of skin in the game and the same level of requirements for less reckless rhetoric. And I would say that no, the distributors themselves aren't able to differentiate. They're not able to differentiate. It's like you said, all distributors are bad. I'm not saying you said that. I'm saying that the suppliers is saying over Twitter, all distributors are bad. They're blocking us. They're the worst in the world.
Sure.
In one side of their mouth. And then the next morning in the sales meeting, they're like, hey guys, I want you to grow my brand 20%, 30%. It's like
asking them to help grow your brand at the same time, crapping all over them.
You just spent last night trashing me over social media. Why am I supposed to help you out now? I would never say that about a customer. The thing is, the fundamental problem in our supply chain is that people are looking at distributors like they're FedEx, and they should be looking at them like they're a customer. Every time I say
that happens both ways, though. At least from the spirit side.
Thing to do because again of that, it's that requirement, with spirits especially, it's that requirement. Look, they provide a most valuable service. I don't want to. I don't want to be running trucks. I don't want to be running sales staff and invoicing all these.
A lot of startups wouldn't be able to start up if they had to self-distribute. I totally get that, and I've even said often that United specifically, our good friend Scott Crownover, which the guy's a freaking United catches all this stuff from other people. Scott Crownover is a freaking saint, and if you are a small brand, it is my opinion that the easiest way to get your foot off the ground into growing that business is to go with United, simply because they're going to take a crap ton of your product and put it out there all over specs. It's an easy win when you're growing, when you're a young brand. But when you're a young brand and you're with some of the bigger guys, and I'm not specifically thinking of anyone specific, or maybe I am. Yeah.
There's only so many.
Their priorities don't always focus on. I've literally had I had a distributor in this room one day, John Curran, and we were talking about. There have been in those meetings, they've told suppliers that it's not my job to build your brand, that they're order takers, and in that case, that mentality is where I think the distributing tier has become a bit entitled at times.
Well, and I would say that is a perfect example of when you don't use the word distributor tier to describe them all. Because my two distributors here in town, HEC and Faust, are brand builders, and they're grinding every minute. I had them over to the brewery late last night, and I'm not saying all distributors. I specifically just mean that's what I'm saying. Is that syntactically, grammatically, legit, if we were to go to the stenographer, you did say all distributors. And
did I say all distributors, or did I say
the distributor tier?
That is
so. What we
the
need
fact
to
that it's
then
required,
say,
I think, is offensive.
Why don't we just say there are certain distributors?
On our next break, let's go back and check.
Right? No,
so I'm pretty sure what I said was
we can amend our speech and say certain distributors. We can always say that.
Told you I misspeak a lot.
Well, no, and it's not about misspeaking. It's not
Chris,
about misspeaking.
You helped pick it, and you haven't even had any.
For me, the greater point I'm making is like, let's just leave a little bit of room for our counterparties to be human beings, and let's talk about them as human beings, and let's dial down the rhetoric a little bit, and then we'll find a ton of common ground. Because in my negotiations with my distributors, we've split the pie in a really beautiful way every single time. Yeah. I've got two guys who spend time listening and learning. They care immensely. I used to work at Silver Eagle directly for John Johnson, and I know that they do the same thing. They do business the right way as well. In a lot of these angles, there's a lot of hand-to-hand combat that I don't love, but at the end of the day, our customers don't share no one shares alignment, right? Like, we're not all going to agree on 100% of things. Sure. So, but let's not fight over the 10% that we don't agree on,
what's that phrase? Scratch your back, you scratch. There's a French phrase, like
quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo. It's not French; it's Latin. My apologies. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If you guys have split up in a beautiful way, you're basically saying that you've seen the benefits of that.
Yeah. What do you care about? This is what I care about. This is what I need to have. This is what it'd be nice to have. So the conversation with the distributors is just like, look, you were worried about a full end around where you're not going to get any aspect. You're going to go out of business if Anheuser-Busch starts selling direct, right? Argument number one, there's a bread factory right next to me where I live on Washington Ave. There's a discount bread store right next to it. I drive by it to go to Kroger because I want to buy other things, not just bread. So the direct model doesn't necessarily work.
That's a great example.
Let's look at a vertically integrated example. So Apple was a manufacturer, then also vertically integrated into retail by owning Apple stores. They release iPads exclusively through their network, and Best Buy says, hey, I think you forgot how big my dick is. And then Apple's like, oh yeah.
Is that allowed?
and then Best Buy.
One per segment. You want to go ahead and say the F word now?
And then Best Buy is like, hey, I just realized that I don't have to sell any Apple products whatsoever if you want to compete directly against me.
Best Buy said that?
I mean, they could have.
I mean, real quick, for those who don't know, what's a Best Buy? They're not around anymore. Today's youth has no idea who they are.
So when you're driving to Blockbuster and you look right
past the red box,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you're going to Blockbuster, yeah, and you might have seen them they sell a lot of fax machines, but no. But the greater point is if you're a manufacturer who vertically integrates into retail to compete against your number one customer will take you out with normal market forces. If we only release the exclusive cool things through our tap room, I can't then go to Justin Cody, who has supported me every day for 7 years, and then sell him my trash, right? Justin, who buys for all specs, is gonna be like, Raz, come on, man, I want some of that good stuff too.
Sure.
And so you're going to release through multi-channels to get to the end consumer that runs the whole organization.
Sure.
At the end of the day, we're all in service to the customer.
That bottom line.
The customer is king, and if our customer's happy, then everyone's happy. And my customer is coming to my tap room and they're saying, hey, I want a 6-pack to go. And it's just a 6-pack. They're not looking for discount rates. If I start discounting against HEB, HEB's going to be like, hey,
what the heck?
Exactly.
That's what I've
we don't need to sell any of your beer anyway, since you want to take the fight right at us. No, we just want to sell an extra 6-pack to the customer who just wants to continue the party once they get home.
Sure.
And they don't want to stop at, this place or this place. Maybe they wouldn't even stop. So maybe we're creating a new drinking occasion, So if you frame it in that conversation and you're talking to the distributors and you're like, your major concern is being completely cut out of the deal, let's add a cap. Let's add the right cap. and that's fine. And it starts at 2 bottles, and a couple years from now it becomes 4 or it becomes more, you know.
2's annoying though. I think 2's annoying a month.
It is, especially when you have multiple products, and we've got guests that come from literally all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, all over the world, and they would like to take place. One of each. And
2 of my best friends are in town for the anniversary party, and if I don't give them one of those bottles today, they won't be my friends anymore. So I've got one at home, and we'll be drinking it tonight. So I agree, and they go and they want more than 2, and it's like, well, we can't. Yeah. But that's why I don't think it's appropriate to paint all distributors with a simple brush with this geared up rhetoric.
Now I need to know. At this break, I'm gonna go. Let's go back. Can we go back and look, or is no?
Oh no,
that's not how it works.
Oh no,
I have to know. No, just wait. It's fine. No, because I'm almost positive what I said is I think the entire idea that the distributing tier is required is what pisses me off.
To be clear though, my beef is with my compatriots in the guild and the rhetoric that they choose to be pushing out.
How long have you been sitting there waiting for me to say something about the single malt? Sorry, I'm listening to you, but he gave me a look right now.
No, this is
when
so
did
much
we taste it last? What, 7-8 months ago? A year ago?
A year and what month is it? A year and 1 month ago. It was in December.
And all you guys were saying it was ready to release then.
Yeah, and you waited another 7 months, 8 months? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're not interrupting.
He was looking at me like, "You gonna say something about my?"
No, the liquid for you.
I don't care if you endorse it, but you were involved, man.
No. This is absolutely. I remember a distinct cotton candy note on one of them. Or birthday cake was what one of them was.
They're all different, you know. That one is just super chocolate.
Well, let's talk about y'all's collaboration for this, because this is the first time a brewery and a distiller came together to actually distill something together. Walk us through the entire thing from start to finish.
Well, we've been buds, Rassul, Ryan, all of us. You know, we've been buds for a long time, you know, and you know, got in kind of at the same time. And I don't even know how this came about. It just
I do have a picture of Travis with a cigar in his mouth pouring liquid into my mouth directly off of a
brandy.
barrel.
That was our 2-year anniversary. That was brandy.
Yeah.
A little small barrel of brandy.
That was yeah. So that was many years ago. But I think it plays out in the liquid, because you can just see the authenticity of it, where it's just 2 bros on the playground playing football, you know? Like,
well, so those who don't know, you actually mashed at his facility.
Yes.
Yeah.
So walk us through the whole thing.
It would have taken me a week and a half probably to produce that same amount, and they let me use their place to do it. We had the grains delivered there.
Yeah.
I came down for one of the days.
Yeah.
And I think it was the first day.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. Oh man, no, it was horrible. Fortunately, we have employees who actually do things, because I think it was 2 in the afternoon.
Because y'all didn't do anything.
I think it was 2 in the afternoon when Ryan sent me a text. He's like, "Hey man, Travis is really hammered in my office, and I need to do this." I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. It was awesome. Our teams were actually working, and then we were just like wrecking balls. It was very bad. I think, actually, now that I'm thinking about the effect of working with you on my personal life and self-respect and dignity, maybe we shouldn't collaborate more.
Yeah.
Well, this is your first go at a single malt, yeah?
It is.
And fairly successful. I mean, this was very well received. I've heard nothing but good things from everybody involved. Yeah. The consumers have talked about it constantly. And you mashed from conception. Now you posted recently, as a side note, that you and Stuart, your compadre, your right hand man over at Whitmeyer's, you guys were distilling one night or doing something, and he had mentioned we should do a rum. I have been saying that for 2 years.
Well, a lot of people have, and I mentioned earlier the Diageo thing, the Myers rum thing. So we had to amend our trademark because I guess our name's too similar. And
Whitmeyer's rum, I could see being a very close.
Yeah. So we don't want to step on Diageo's toes.
Yeah.
They've got their own troubles right now.
Anyway, so rum has definitely been hanging out there, and this is rum country. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah.
And
the group has definitely shifted. I mean, I've been a big proponent. The group started off as a Houston Bourbon Society, and it's basically the Houston Barrel Age Society. Anything that spends time in a barrel, whether it's a beer or a rum or a Armagnac right now. Have you tasted it yet?
I was hoping you had some.
I didn't bring it because I'm not bragging. I'm just telling something I'm excited about. Okay?
Oh yeah.
My favorite comedian of all time is a guy named Tom Segura. And he's in town tonight.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's inviting me backstage to drink. He's into whiskey. And I tried to get him on the show, and they did a show in Dallas last night. So I'm going to pick up another bottle, because you've already opened and killed one bottle of the Armagnac to bring tonight. But I left the house late this morning. I was like, I got to get here by 10 because we're doing the show. So after we do this, I got to drive to my side of town, pick up a bottle of the Armagnac, then come back to this side of town.
How many bottles did you end up with?
Of the Armagnac?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I bought 2. Oh, sorry, we're in a second. I bought 2. I plan on buying another case today. I just haven't gotten around to it.
And Randy really bought 40 bottles?
Is that true? He bought 42, but there's a lot of national groups that we're in.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other.
So he's muling for
a lot of people of influence that he's friends with. It's like, hey, can I? You guys are company owners. I know that there's people who've been like, hey, can I get a this or can I get a that? So he bought up 42 bottles to send out to his appropriate friends who've pulled favors and cards for him. He's really good friends with the guy that does, and I won't say his name on here because can I have one of those napkins? He specifically asked me not to, but the guy that does California Gold. California Gold, if you know who that is a guy out of, I assume, California that is famous for blending his own bourbon. He doesn't make it, but he will bottle and wax his own and kind of sell it to friends at cost. So he's not making money, but he's also doing something kind of crazy illegal. And he's kind of been famous for this little private proprietary secret blend, and everyone knows, like, oh, have you ever had California Gold? So he there's few people who've been like, hey, can you hook me up? So a long time ago, he had already said he had planned on buying 42 bottles. I will tell you that I'm sure he's buying at least 2 cases for himself. So 12 bottles at least for himself. It's an incredible Armagnac, 18 years old. And we had the discussion last week with Evans. People are wanting to buy a $175 bottle of 14-year-old Boone County bourbon. And when you know the cost involved with that, and you know that it was selling for $100 last year, but you're hesitant to buy an 18-year-old Armagnac at cask strength for $175 or $180?
Yeah.
That's where the consumer kind of drives me nuts a little bit, where you're like, you're not making sense.
Consumers don't make sense.
Sometimes.
No, we don't. No one does. Even in your own life, you just don't. If you look in the mirror at your own decisions, you just don't do it. You don't make sense.
I look at my 4 beautiful kids and I'm like, what was I thinking? It was a horrible mistake. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm talking about the fact that, like, I was on my PlayStation and I was like, I don't know, Madden.
I love 19. The fact that you're a PlayStation guy and not an
right?
Xbox guy.
I'm like, okay, Madden 19
just moved up a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
Madden 19 is like $70 and Madden 18 is like $30. Okay, well, I'm going to go to Madden 18 to save the $40, right? So that's what I did. And then that night, go buy like a $50 scotch and not even care for like 2 seconds.
Right. Because you're like, that's that whole argument over.
You make no sense.
If you buy something on Amazon for $20 with free shipping, it's not a problem. But if it's $15 with $5 shipping, you're like, screw that, I'm out.
That's what I'm talking about. So, and it's the psychology of the decision.
Sure.
It's just impossible to understand. And anyone who thinks they're rational is wrong. Anyone who's marketing to consumers that they think are rational hasn't spent enough time actually looking in the mirror themselves, or whatever. Like, but all the answers are just in yourself. If you just watch the way you shop and you're like, I have not bought anything at a supermarket that didn't have a shelf tag on it. That's funny. And then I go and I'm like, hey, sales reps, do you have a shelf tag there? No. Well, why didn't you make sure you got the shelf tag right there? Like, because when was the last time you bought something in a grocery store?
You know the price of it.
Even if it's pitted versus like not pitted Kalamata olives, right? Like one's $2.29, the other's $2.99. I'm saving those 70 cents, right? And it's just literally whether the olive has a pit in it or not, right? You're that price sensitive when you're talking about a $3 olive, right? And then when you go to a bar, you're like, oh yeah, I'll buy a round. I just met this guy. I love him too. I'm going to buy him a beer too.
Sure.
And then you're like, well, it was $20. Way to save those 70 cents.
I remember when Houston Hayes first came out, and you could find it at a grocery store for $20 for a 4-pack. People were like, that's too much. And I've seen people spend crazy amounts of money for bourbon. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but that beer's not it's not bad. It's totally worth $20, you know? And now they've just done smaller cans. They're doing 12 ounces now. Did you drop the cord?
Yeah, I dropped it. My bad. I'll grab it. Yeah.
How you doing over there, Travis?
I'm good. I'm good. Pacing myself.
Why? Let's see that bottle chug, Travis. Up
Jekyll
here.
and Hyde.
A Jekyll and Hyde.
Switch.
that forklift Travis is what I like to call him. Speaking of Wild Turkey and Jack Daniels, you mentioned that earlier. The average consumer assumes, because we remember from our college years that Jack and Wild Turkey was what you got drunk on.
Yeah.
But in the bourbon community, the Wild Turkey is very well respected, and Jack Daniels is, especially the barrel strength, is extremely well respected. But you reach this, it's like these different levels. Like when you first get into whiskey, you assume these are trash. Then when you think you know more than you know, you still assume they're trash. And then later you finally get to a point where you've been in the hobby long enough that you kind of get rid of some of that ego a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with it. I'll be honest with you.
It's a totally different world.
This is
the two
unbelievable.
Bottles.
So can I I'm going to say this. Probably shouldn't. I'm going to say it anyways. When we first tasted it, you were doing the hyperbaric chamber thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the birthday cake, the cotton candy, that note I was getting in one of them. And I took home, before that night that we tasted through them, you had let me taste it. You sent me home with a sample. So it was, you didn't, no legal ramifications. What's the statute of limitations? But I went home with a bottle of that much of the single malt left after it had been in the hyperbaric chamber. And I came back to it one night, and it was different. And I thought, maybe, in my mind, I was thinking, this was a year and a half ago. This is longer than that, because that night was a year and a month ago. I first tasted your single malt like a year and a half ago, like long before that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, like, there's something different about it. Not bad, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And my mind started going through the process, the whole idea of a hyperbaric chamber going up to 20. I asked you to kind of walk us through it earlier, and we ended up not doing it, but we'll get back to it in a second.
Sure.
But the hyperbaric chamber thing, I thought maybe after a certain amount of time at normal barometric pressure that it would that it might have changed a little bit, at least taste wise or oxidation wise. I was trying to figure out why I was getting a different note, and in tasting it now, this is fantastic.
Thank you.
Like, this is, and you actually, we picked it a year and a half ago almost, or a year and a month ago. And there was a certain point about a few months ago where we're like, what's going on that we still haven't seen it? And Travis was like, it's not ready yet. And he doesn't want to release it.
I'm not going to put it out, man.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do it.
You didn't want to release it until it was ready.
The entire time our collaboration's in the tanks. I'm like trying to call him, or like, hey man, how are things going? They're like, hey, I'm really busy. I'm like, hey, is that ready? Is it ready yet? I was like,
and it wasn't ready yet.
I was like, in the kids in the backseat, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? So I was like, shut up. We will get there when we get there, and you will love it. God damn it, you're gonna have fun.
The fact
he was right.
The fact that you waited until it was perfect was apropos. Like, this is such a great little gift. A little, we call them taste treats in our house. Little, when your wife's cooking a meal and she's making something great, and you just go in there and you take little bites. Like, that's what that is. Just little taste treats, little perfect, little bold, beautiful single malt, and it was your first go at it. Which, congratulations, man!
Thank you.
All right, so. Now that I'm done ranting, walk us through what happened, how it came to be, the barometric chamber, for people who don't know.
Yeah, so the hyperbaric chamber thing is just a weird story. We had a guy, he's an out of work, he captained, I don't know all the terminology, but he had a couple of offshore vessels that he ran, oil and gas. And when oil and gas tanked several years back, he found himself out of work. He's also an adventurist. And he'd climbed Everest a couple of times. Anyway, he had this
couple of times.
Only a couple.
Yeah.
What a loser.
So he's a local, at the distillery. So he comes through and hangs out. And he's like, I've got this chamber in my garage. It's not doing anything. what if we just threw a couple of whiskey barrels in there?
Okay, by the way, the last time a regular at the brewery said that to me, it didn't go the same way. I went to the chamber. Anyways, never mind. So a dude goes to your place and is like, hey, I've got a chamber in my garage.
Yeah.
It's not doing anything.
And they just happen to fit barrels.
Like,
do you want to come look at it? And then you looked at it.
Yeah. And he brought it up and we hooked the thing up. We put it on a timer. And he used to decompress in this thing, right? So like
he'd get in there. He'd crawl in there.
He would sleep in this thing.
Wow.
You know.
Goku over here.
Yeah. So there.
Old school reference.
So, I would like to say this got dirtier than I expected, but actually this is par for the course for what I expected.
Can you imagine
a
taking
dude
DMT,
that has a chamber at his home,
doing DMT and going to a hyperbaric chamber?
So we were able to fit 2 30-gallon barrels in there. And we had to kind of rig it, because those barrels are heavy, they're especially full, so getting them in and out. But we had, long story short, and I didn't know what it would do. The idea was, okay, well, it might do something to speed up the age. It'll definitely maybe change things. Definitely
explain what it does.
So we're sitting pretty much at sea level right here in the H, right? So
sure.
We put this vacuum pump on this chamber and put it on a timer. So every 24 hours that pump would kick on, take the air pressure inside to mimic up to about 20,000 feet. And then gradually the thing would drop back down, back to sea level. And it did that for 9 months. So I put 2 barrels in there. I mean, and we sealed the thing. So it's not like we were able to open it and check on progress. I half expected to open that door up and see just whiskey everywhere.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going to happen.
Pull the barrel apart or something, yeah.
Right. So, and we had 2 identical barrels sitting outside of the chamber. And, there were 3 different yeast strains, and then there was a one-off. The one-off is the 3T. That's the 102 proof.
Okay.
So
I would just, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just to give a little bit of context, Travis has been talking about the effect of pressure and being at sea level on the barrel and the effects on his liquid for 5 years. As long as I've known you, you've been talking about, so like I was almost glib earlier when you talked about the Texas movement, and I'm like, I still don't understand Texas versus this versus that, know, but these are the moments, that was the first moment when I started thinking about the actual effect of climate, terroir, and everything.
Everyone's been trying to crack the code of Texas whiskey for so long because it does have kind of a, in some people's eyes, not a great reputation because it's just not ready yet, right? There's all this passion and pride behind it.
But I'm a very scientific thinker, and that's all that fluffy stuff that doesn't make sense to me. And then what I love when I hear Travis talking is when he's talking about the effect of like what is only specific to Houston, what is the things that you can only do here in Houston, and then just even as simple as that A/B testing approach where you had the experiment, where you had the control off to the side. People aren't doing that. People aren't doing that enough, and that's what I love about Travis's approach and what is just so amazing. Like we can talk about how great the liquid is. That's the last piece, right? Sure. But the pieces leading up to that is that scientific approach of I'm not going to just like who goes and tries out a chamber in the first place, but then also
especially
I'm not just
first go at it.
I'm not going to just
first go at it, and you're like, well, why not?
But not just like I'll try it. I'm also going to have a control off to the side and market and do, because like we tasted, Ryan brought 4 mason jars with your chicken scratches on the top to my to my place, and I didn't know what the difference was. We just did double blind taste tests to say, oh, this is the one that we liked of those 4 mason jars, and then I think it went back to you, and it'd be fun to like know what that permutation is, But I don't think people are doing double blind taste tests with controlled experiments to that level. So I just don't want the casual listener to hear how casual and awesome Travis is and miss the fact that this is unfiltered straight genius. Like I've never heard anyone do anything like that. Have we ever heard
straight genius?
Have we ever heard anyone do that?
UFSG. I'm going to get you a shirt made.
Yes.
Well, it's something that we've been, and we're up against it now. We've got to do something, but we're still 100% family owned and operated. We don't have any outside influence. We haven't taken any outside money. Mm-hmm. And I know as soon as you do that, well, it's going to influence the product. And how much is it going to influence the product? Yeah, I mean, I don't have the most output. I'm not obviously not. But
you're sitting in a nice position to be able to still innovate at will, and innovation at will is going back to the whole discussion over when you have so much behind you where it kind of forces you financial decision versus creativity. You're in a great little spot there, and you're being able to do really fun, interesting stuff. And to this day, I stand by what I've said for years, and that I think Whitmeyer's really is my number one grain to glass. Like your juice, your distillate, both single malt and the bourbon in Texas, I think is the best thing that's being bottled right now. Now, there's some other great ones out there that I love, but that's number one. I will say that we have filled 4 full segments, and we're gonna keep going on iTunes only. So this will not be on the Facebook portion. There's just a little bit more to cover before I'm not quite ready for this to be over with yet. So if we're gonna keep going. If you want to check this out, you can listen on iTunes, and that will be completely uncensored, so you can go at it.
Fuck yeah!
And
wait,
that was still
market, dude.
That was still on radio. All right, guys. Cheers. Thanks so much, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Boom. Dude, that makes me sick.